Hi, this is Van. I'm going to show you how to start your chunky knit blanket by creating a chain. So the first thing we need to do when we create a chain is to create that slip knot. Here's my tail. Working yarn end is the end of the yarn that's attached to your ball of yarn or your skein of yarn. You're going to take your working yarn and lay it back over your tail. And I want about a 6-inch tail before my slip knot. I'm going to go down through that loop I just created with my left hand, grab the working yarn, pull it up through and hold, grab the tail with my right hand, pull here, and tighten this knot. Now, I'm not going to tighten this knot completely. I'm going to wait to tighten this knot until after I have completed my chain and added my first row of stitches, and then I'll add that slip knot. And let me just show you really quickly why. So here's a chain, and you can see right here I've created the chain, and I've added the first row of stitches, and I've completed the last stitch in that row, in my first row. And so now I'm going to tighten this slip knot. See it there on the end? I'm going to tighten that now so you can see how it's loose. The reason why I wait is because I want that corner to be nice and squared off. So now I'm going to tighten it. I'm going to just kind of grab right here and pull this over and then pull on the tail. And what I'm trying to do is make this stitch right here on the bottom of my chain look nice and squared off. And that looks good to me. So I'm going to go ahead and tighten it now. And it'll just look better on that end. If you don't do this, sometimes this end stitch on the bottom of your chain will be kind of big, and it just doesn't look as nice. So that's why I wait to tighten my slip knot until I've created the chain and added that first row of stitches. So the loop that we just created when we tied that slip knot, that is the first stitch of our chain. To pull out more stitches, and I'm going to be pulling them out horizontally here, I'm going to move the working yarn over so it's centered underneath that first stitch I just created. And now I'm going to be going down through and grabbing that working yarn and pulling a stitch out. Before I go down through and grab that working yarn, I want to make sure that I'm supporting the previous stitch, that I'm not going to be tightening it up. So what I do is I press down on the bottom legs of that last stitch, right here and here. I'm going to press down and hold that in place. And then I'm going to take my pincher fingers here, my thumb and my finger, and I'm going to go down through and I'm going to grab this working yarn. And what I'm doing is I'm going to grab it, or pinch it, I guess. Pinch it. I'm going to pull it up through that stitch, and I'm going to turn my hand to the right and then pull that stitch out, let it kind of slide out around my finger. So I'm going to go down through, pinch, pull it up, twist to the right, and then I'm going to let that slide out. Now, this obviously isn't the right size, and notice I'm still holding here and pressing down because I don't want to tighten that previous stitch. I'm going to bring this down in size a little bit, and then I want it to be just a little bit smaller than I want my stitches, because I'm going to put my 4 fingers, I'm going to be using 4 fingers to measure my stitches in my chain. I'm going to put my 4 fingers in there and kind of nudge it up to the size I want. That'll help me get that correct size. So there's the size I want. And now that I've got the size I want, I'm going to go ahead and remove my 2 fingers, and I'm going to start again. I'm going to move my working yarn to the center. I'm going to press down on the bottom of that last stitch. I'm going to go down through, grab the working yarn, pull it up, twist to the right, and pull it out. So when I'm pinching the working yarn and pulling it up, I want to keep my finger in there. And if I keep my finger in there, see where it ends up when I'm pulling that stitch out? We want that finger up in there. That's going to force that stitch to lay right. We want that working yarn to always be coming out the bottom of our chain. And I know that sounds confusing, so let me just show you. I'm going to go down through and pinch, pull up, twist to the right, and I'm keeping my finger in there. See my finger in there? And now I'm going to pull up and pull that stitch out. Just kind of lay it down there. Notice I'm still holding here. And then I'm going to bring that down in size. And then I'm going to kind of just nudge that up to the size I need. There's the size I want. Now I'm going to let go here and I'm going to start again. Move this over to the center, press down, and then I'm going to pinch, pull it up, twist to the right, pull that stitch out. Notice my working yarn's coming out the bottom. It has to be coming out the bottom of every stitch. I know you'll see a lot of videos where people are creating chains and they're doing it like up, up in the air like this, and they're just kind of going to town and pulling out the chain. That's fine, but they've probably been knitting for a while and it's probably easy for them to do uniform stitches. When you're just starting out and you're a beginner, it's easier, I think, to do it while it's laying on the table and you can kind of see everything and make sure that there's that size I want. Make sure that you're doing uniform stitches, that you're pulling out the right amount or adjusting it down to the size you need, and that your working yarn's coming out the bottom, and that you didn't tighten the previous stitch. And the way that you don't tighten the previous stitch is you always make sure, regardless of where you're at in the blanket, you're always pulling new stitches from the working yarn end. You're never tightening the previous stitch. I'll let go there. Start again. Move this to the center. Press down. Pinch, pull it up, twist to the right, pull a stitch out. Now I'm still pressing down here because I don't want to tighten that last stitch. I'm going to put my hand in there. And there's my size. And now I'm going to let go. And then I'm going to do it again. Without changing the size here, I'm going to push that to the center. Press down. Go down through. Pull up. And I'm just literally just turning that much. Just barely turning. And my finger is up in there, just like that. Okay. Now I'm going to put my 4 fingers in there to check the size. Once I check the size, then I'm going to release here. If you don't continue to hold that while you're pulling the stitch out and checking the size, you could tighten that previous stitch. Let me just show you. So I'm not going to hold that previous stitch. I'm going to reach down through and pull my stitch out. Did you see how I just tightened that previous stitch? See how little it got? I'm going to do it again. I won't hold it. Do you see the difference? So look at my stitches here. See how they're roughly the same size. And then right here, that's where I quit holding it. So if you can somehow protect that previous stitch as you're pulling out a new stitch, that's going to keep you from tightening that previous stitch. You always, always, always want to make sure you're pulling new stitches from the working yarn end. So when I'm teaching people in workshops how to do that, I encourage them to hold here, go down through and pull the stitch out, check their size. Just gonna nudge that up. There's the size I want, and then release. And then without changing that size, move that to the center, move the working yarn to the center, press down, and pull that stitch out. There's that size I want. And you can see we've got roughly the same size stitches. And here I am going a little bit faster. This is how I do it. And you can see I'm doing it a little bit differently, but I'm reaching down through and grabbing this. And as I'm grabbing this, my hands kind of rolled over and holding that previous stitch, and then I'm pulling out a new stitch. And I check it each and every time. I like my stitches to be very uniform. Okay, so let's count stitches real quick to see where we're at. Now remember, this is the slip knot right here that we haven't tightened. Whoops, I have to move that over. This is the slip knot right here that we haven't tightened. So don't worry about that right there. So here's our first stitch. And I think it's easiest when you're beginning to stick your fingers down in these holes so you can really understand what you're counting. So you can count top or bottom holes. I'm going to just count the top holes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and that's a hole 13. We have to count that end stitch. See that stitch on the end? That's a hole that has to be counted as part of your chain. I'm going to go with 14 stitches, so I'm going to add one more stitch to my chain, move that over to the center, and pull out a stitch. So now I've got 14 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. We always have to count that end one. So we're going to go with a chain of 14 stitches just so it fits in the frame a little bit better so you can see everything. And that's how you create your chain.